Have you ever looked back at a year of your life and realized, nothing changed? Not because you didn't think about change. Not because you didn't want it badly enough. You thought about it constantly. You made lists. You told people about your plans. You felt genuinely motivated at least a dozen times. And yet, nothing moved. This is one of the most common and most painful experiences a person can have. And psychology has a lot to say about why it happens, and what's actually going on beneath the surface when a person is stuck between wanting something and actually getting it. This isn't about laziness. It's about the specific, invisible ways the human mind works against you, often disguised as productivity, self-awareness, or even motivation. Let's break it down. 1. Your brain treats imagination like reality. The first reason people get stuck is one of the most fascinating in all of neuroscience. When you vividly imagine yourself achieving a goal, getting the promotion, building the business, losing the weight, your brain responds almost identically to how it would if you had actually done those things. Studies in mental simulation show that the same neural pathways activate during vivid imagination as during real experience. The brain doesn't fully distinguish between a richly imagined future and a lived present. This sounds like a superpower. In some ways, it is. Athletes use visualization to improve performance. But there's a dark side that most people stumble into without knowing it. When your brain simulates success, it releases a small amount of dopamine, the same reward chemical that fires when you actually accomplish something. This gives you a subtle emotional sense of completion, not a full dose, but enough to take the edge off your urgency. Psychologist Gabrielle Eddingen spent years researching this phenomenon and found something counterintuitive. People who spend the most time fantasizing about positive outcomes actually take less action toward those outcomes than people who think about obstacles. The fantasy, in small doses, becomes a substitute for the real thing. So every time you imagine the version of yourself who has it all figured out, you're draining a little of the pressure that would otherwise push you to act. 2. Planning is a form of procrastination. There is a specific type of person who is always preparing. They have notebooks. They have 5-year plans. They've researched every option, read every book, watched every relevant YouTube video. They can explain the strategy in detail. But they haven't started. Psychology calls this productive procrastination, the tendency to perform tasks that feel related to a goal, but aren't the goal itself. The brain gets to feel busy, feel responsible, feel like a serious person, without ever facing the actual discomfort of beginning. Planning feels meaningful because it is meaningful, in the right dose. But it becomes an escape when it's used to avoid the moment when things stop being theoretical. That moment is frightening for a reason we'll talk about soon. But first, understand this: the brain loves to optimize for feeling good, not for actual progress. Planning feels like progress. It feels like discipline. It feels safe. And it keeps you exactly where you are. 3. Fear of failure disguises itself as caution. Here's something almost no one admits to themselves clearly. Many people who talk about big dreams and never act on them are not lazy. They are terrified. Not of hard work. Not of failure exactly. But of what failure would mean about them. Psychologist Carol Dweck's research on fixed versus growth mindset revealed a crucial pattern. People who believe their abilities are fixed, that talent is something you have or you don't, tend to avoid challenges. Not because they don't care about success, but because trying and failing would prove something they don't want confirmed. If you never try, you never fail. And if you never fail, your self-image stays intact. "I could have done it if I'd really tried," is one of the most comforting lies a person can tell themselves. It preserves the idea of potential without exposing it to risk. This is why some people stay in the planning phase for years. The plan is perfect. The dream is perfect. As long as neither of them are tested, they remain perfect. The moment you start, the possibility of failure becomes real. And for someone with a fixed mindset and a fragile self-image, that risk is too high, even unconsciously. 4. Waiting for the right moment is a trap. I'll start when I feel ready. Psychology is fairly clear on this. The feeling of readiness almost never comes before action. It comes from action. This is a reversal of how most people think about motivation. Most people believe the sequence is, feel motivated, take action, see results. But research on behavioral activation, a technique used in cognitive behavioral therapy, shows the actual sequence is almost the opposite: take action, build momentum, feel motivated. The feeling of readiness is largely generated by having done something, by being in motion, by seeing even a small piece of evidence that you're capable. But if you wait to feel ready first, you're waiting for something that requires the action you haven't taken. It's a loop. A closed loop. The right moment is also a moving target. There will always be a reason why now isn't quite right. The month is wrong. The finances aren't stable. Life is too busy. Something is about to change. Better to wait and do it properly. This thinking doesn't protect you. It just moves the goalpost forward indefinitely. 5. Overthinking is mental debt. The mind is not a machine that runs on infinite energy. Every decision, every analysis, every round of consideration uses real cognitive resources. When you think through your goals obsessively, every possible outcome, every potential mistake, every step of the plan, you're spending mental energy. And you're spending it before you've done a single thing. Psychologists call this decision fatigue. The more mental effort you spend before a task, the less capacity you have when it's time to actually execute. This is why surgeons who perform multiple operations in a day make measurably worse decisions in later surgeries. It's why people make worse financial decisions after long meetings. Overthinking is not preparation. It is debt. You are borrowing energy from your future self and spending it on hypothetical scenarios that may never happen. By the time the moment comes to act, you've already spent your resources. You feel exhausted without having done anything. And from the outside, or even from the inside, it looks like laziness. It's not. It's the result of burning through cognitive fuel on a mental simulation instead of the real task. 6. Identity is the deepest lock. This is the one most people never talk about, and it may be the most important. The brain is designed, in part, to keep you consistent with your self-concept. Psychologists call this self-verification theory. People actively seek feedback in situations that confirm how they see themselves, even when that self-image is negative. If you secretly believe, not consciously, not in the part of your mind that makes inspirational posts, but in the quiet background of your identity, that you're the kind of person who doesn't follow through, who starts things and stops them, who is not really that disciplined, then your brain will work to protect that belief. Not because your brain wants you to suffer. Because consistency is psychologically safe. Change is a threat to the coherent story of who you are. So when you try to take a new action that doesn't fit your current identity, you feel friction. Resistance. A voice that says this isn't really you. That says you'll mess it up. That says you should wait until you're sure. That voice is your identity defending itself. This is why James Clear, in his work on habit formation, argues that the most powerful change is identity change, not trying to add a new behavior on top of an old self-image, but deciding to become a different kind of person first. I'm trying to work out more, is a goal. I'm someone who takes care of their body, is an identity. An identity, once adopted, generates behavior automatically. Without changing the identity, you're fighting your own brain every single day. 7. Comfort expands to fill the space you give it. Human beings are remarkably adaptive. We adjust to almost anything: difficulty, hardship, change. But we also adjust to ease. And once comfort becomes the default, the threshold for discomfort rises fast. When you spend years in a comfortable routine, even an unhappy one, your nervous system begins to treat that routine as safe. Anything outside it registers as a threat, even if that threat is something you consciously want. This is why people stay in jobs they hate, relationships that don't serve them, habits that are slowly hurting them. Not because they don't know better, but because the known discomfort is manageable, and the unknown discomfort of change is frightening in a way that's hard to articulate. Every time you choose comfort in the moment, you're reinforcing the neural pathway that says, stay here, it's safer. And that pathway gets stronger with each repetition. The willingness to be uncomfortable is not a personality trait. It's a skill. And like every skill, it atrophies when not practiced. 8. The gap between knowing and doing. By now, you may be recognizing yourself in some of these patterns. Most intelligent, self-aware people do. And here's the cruel irony: knowing about these psychological traps does not automatically free you from them. The gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it is one of the most studied problems in behavioral psychology, and one of the least solved. Understanding that fear of failure holds you back doesn't make the fear disappear. Understanding that planning can be procrastination doesn't immediately make planning feel less satisfying. Understanding that your identity is working against you doesn't instantly change your identity. So what does help? Psychology points to a few reliable levers. The first is commitment devices, external structures that make inaction harder than action. Telling someone else your plan. Paying for a class in advance. Setting a deadline with consequences. These work because they shift the path of least resistance. The second is reducing the size of the starting action until it becomes impossible to avoid. Not, go to the gym every day. But, put on gym shoes. Not, write a chapter. But, open the document. The brain resists big unfamiliar actions. Small ones slip past the resistance. The third, and most durable, is the identity shift. Start defining yourself by the behaviors you want to have before you have them consistently. Not as a delusion, but as a direction. The research on self-perception theory shows that people who act in accordance with a stated identity gradually begin to genuinely hold that identity. You become what you consistently do, but you also, to a degree, do what you've decided to become. Final thoughts. Having big dreams is human. It's one of the most beautiful things about us, this ability to imagine a life that doesn't exist yet and feel it as real and worth wanting. But imagination without action is just a story you tell yourself. The difference between people who change their lives and people who only think about changing their lives is rarely talent. Rarely luck. Rarely even effort in the conventional sense. It's honesty. It's being willing to look at the invisible patterns, the false progress, the comfortable planning, the hidden fear, the identity that quietly resists, and decide that none of those things get the final vote. The mind is extraordinary. It will construct elaborate justifications for staying still. It will make comfort feel like wisdom and delay feel like preparation. Your job is to see through it. Not once. Constantly. That's the work. And it starts, it has always only started, with a single action small enough to take right now.